Just let him call me that once. Please?
The black man's voice shook as he held the boy against his chest. He didn't know that just outside the glass door, the boy's white mother was standing there, frozen, her heart cracking open as she heard her son speak for the very first time. And he called another man. Dad. To understand how that one word could destroy and save all three of them in the same breath, we have to go back a few weeks. To the house on the hill, the one made of glass and silence. The Ward house sat high above Seattle, half glass, half stone, perched like it was too good for the city it overlooked. From the outside, it was perfection. From the inside, it was sterile. Every room was wired with machines, monitors, and whiteboards full of neatly color-coded schedules: speech therapy, physical therapy, occupational therapy, neurology follow-ups. There were caregivers, private nurses, nutritionists, money layered on top of fear, over and over, until it formed walls thicker than any brick. In the middle of all that was Noah. 6 years old, limbs too stiff, hands that curled inward when he tried to reach for something, a mouth that had never formed a real word. But his eyes were sharp. He followed light, he followed movement, he followed people, and most of all, he followed her. Elena Ward, 36, founder and CEO, the woman every tech magazine loved to photograph in black suits and sharp heels. The widow who never remarried. The woman who had everything and slept next to a baby monitor every single night, listening to tiny, irregular breaths as if they were numbers in a quarterly report she needed to fix. Some nights, she pressed her fingers to Noah's chest just to feel it rise and fall. Some nights, she whispered apologies he would never hear. "I'm sorry, buddy," she would murmur in the dark. "If I hadn't pushed your dad onto that boat, if I hadn't needed that one last trip, maybe. Guilt had a way of learning your language. Hers spoke in what-ifs and maybe, and if I had just. The only thing she hadn't touched in that house, the only thing the cleaning staff knew to avoid, hung in the living room like a ghost. A wooden guitar, old, the lacquer worn down where fingers had once played it every night. It had belonged to her husband, Mark. Before the storm, before the Coast Guard call, before the wreckage. No one was allowed to touch it. No housekeeper, no nurse, no therapist. Even the interior designer had given it a wide berth. It was the last piece of sound from a life that had gone silent. The first day Malik Johnson showed up, Elena barely noticed him. He came through the side entrance in a gray maintenance uniform with a company logo stitched over his chest. His skin was dark chocolate, his hair close-cropped, beard neatly trimmed. There was a weariness carved into the space between his brows that no amount of sleep would fix. In his file, he was listed as position, facilities and sanitation support, on-site staffing, responsibilities, cleaning, minor repairs, assistance to medical staff. In Elena's head, he was someone to mop the floor, someone to stay out of the way. He pushed a cart filled with supplies, moving quietly down the hallway toward the therapy wing. He hummed under his breath as he worked, a habit he picked up years ago when silence made his thoughts too loud. It was barely anything. Just a pattern of notes he didn't even know he remembered. A little lullaby from some forgotten corner of time. As he passed Noah's room, the humming slipped into the air. Inside, Noah lay strapped gently to a specialized chair, his head supported, his eyes drifting around the ceiling like he was trying to find something that didn't exist. He heard it before anyone else did. Those notes, low, warm, like the sound of a chest when you press your ear against it. Noah's eyes snapped toward the doorway. The speech therapist didn't notice. She was busy holding up flashcards. "Noah, look! Ball! Ball!" she exaggerated, tapping her mouth. Can you try? Ba, ba. Nothing. Noah's gaze stayed fixed on the hallway, on the shadow pushing the cart past his door. Just a voice. Just a hum. But his body knew. Some part of him, deep inside where fear hadn't hardened everything yet, reached for it. His right hand, usually curled tight, twitched. The second time, it happened during a power glitch. Seattle rain was beating down on the glass walls, fat and constant like fingers drumming. A low rumble of thunder rolled beneath it. The lights flickered, died for a moment, then came back on. Malik had been mopping the hallway right outside the living room when the house went dark for those few seconds. In that sudden quiet, he heard it. Not thunder. Little gasps. A choking sound. A frantic beeping spiking up. He let the mop drop. In the therapy room, one of the machines had rebooted a few seconds slower. Noah's chest rose too fast, pupils blown wide, alarms screeching. The nurse rushed to adjust the settings, hands clumsy with panic. "Hey! Hey!" the nurse hissed, more to the machine than the child. Come on, reset!" Noah's terror filled the space, thick and hot and electric. Malik felt his heart slam into an old rhythm. Hospital corridors, emergency codes, another boy, another storm. He stepped in before he could stop himself. "It's okay, little man," he said softly, moving towards the bed, even though this wasn't his job. "You're all right. You're okay. Hear that? Rain's just loud, that's all." He started humming again. A little louder this time. Noah's head jerked toward him. The monitors still screamed, but his breathing, just slightly, just enough, slowed. An almost invisible shift, the difference between drowning and still having your mouth above water. The nurse glanced up, surprised, then back at the screen. She didn't tell Malik to leave. Elena watched the replay that night on the internal camera feeds, alone in her office with 3 empty coffee cups. She saw the power flicker, saw her son's chest heave, saw the nurse fumble. Then she saw the maintenance guy. What was his name again? Malik? Step into the frame. No hesitation. No permission asked. She watched Noah's eyes. They didn't go to the nurse. They didn't go to the machine. They went to the man with the mop. Elena frowned, hit replay, watched it again. "Coincidence," she muttered to herself. "That's all." But later, lying awake, she could still hear that humming. And it did something strange to her. It made her chest feel tight and empty all at once. The third time, there was no accident. It was just rain, the kind Seattle got used to. A soft, steady curtain blurring the city lights below. Power stayed on. Machines hummed. Therapists left on schedule. The house grew quiet. Elena stood in the doorway of the living room, staring at the guitar on the wall like she always did before going to bed. 5 years. No one had touched it. Sometimes she wondered if the dust on it weighed as much as her grief. Behind her, she heard a cart roll by, then stop. "Sorry, Ms. Ward," Malik's voice said. "Didn't mean to get in the way." "You're not," she replied automatically, not turning around. He hovered in the doorway, eyes drifting to the guitar because it was impossible not to. There was something sacred about it, the way it hung alone on that white wall. "That yours?" he asked. It slipped out before he could hold it back. Elena's jaw tightened. "It was my husband's." "I see." Malik nodded once. "He play a lot?" "Every night," she said. Then, softer, almost to herself, "Every damn night." He heard the crack underneath that polished voice. He knew that sound. "Sometimes music's the only thing that makes kids forget. All this," he said, gesturing vaguely toward the wing of the house where the machines lived. "There's nothing to forget," Elena cut in. "There's only what is." He studied her for a second. A woman wrapped in control because if she let go for even a second, everything might fall. "You ever think," he said quietly, "that maybe the kid doesn't need more what is? Maybe he needs a little what used to be?" She turned then, meeting his eyes fully for the first time. They were warm, tired, too familiar. "I didn't hire you to give me parenting advice," she said. "No, ma'am," he answered. "You hired me to clean." He gave a small, polite smile and pushed his cart away. She told herself it didn't bother her. She told herself she didn't watch the camera feed that night out of curiosity. But later, on her tablet, she fast-forwarded footage from Noah's room, from the hallways, from the living room. Searching. And she found something she wasn't prepared for. Around 9 p.m., when the house settled into its mechanical sleep, Malik came back into the empty living room. The footage showed him looking around like someone entering a chapel. He stood in front of the guitar, lifted a hand, stopped, dropped it again, shook his head at himself. Then he turned to leave, and the screen flickered as the clouds outside swallowed the last bit of twilight. The rain grew louder against the glass. He paused. "No," Elena whispered to the recording. "Don't." On screen, Malik's shoulders rose and fell. Then he reached up, fingers brushing the neck of the instrument. He took it off the wall. Elena's whole body went cold. No one touched that guitar. Not the staff, not the therapists, not even Elena. She had built 5 years of rules on top of that one decision. In the recording, Malik cradled it like something fragile and old, like something he'd held before. He sat on the edge of the couch, rain painting gray streaks down the glass behind him. His fingers found the strings, tested them, tuned by instinct, by memory. The first chord rang out through the speakers in Elena's office. The sound punched straight through her. She knew that progression. Not just the chords, the way he played them. The rhythm, the slight drag before the third note. The soft brush of fingers instead of a hard pick. "Impossible," she breathed. He played a melody then, simple. A lullaby, really. A tune her husband had made up years ago, something he used to play on her belly when she was pregnant. He would lean in, press his mouth near where Noah's small foot bulged under her skin, and say, "Hear that, little guy? That's the sound of home." No one else should have known that melody. Yet there it was, spilling out of a stranger's hands. Tears blurred Elena's vision. She blinked them away, furious at herself. On the recording, Malik's eyes were closed. For a moment, his face shifted, like he'd been pulled back into some other time, some other child, some other storm. Then his gaze lifted toward the hallway, as if he could feel someone listening. The camera in Noah's room showed the boy lying awake, eyes fixed on the ceiling. The moment that melody floated in from down the hall, his head tipped to the side. He listened. His fingers twitched again. "Why that song?" Elena whispered to herself. "How do you know that song?" The question sat heavy in her chest long after the recording ended. The day everything broke started like any other. Gray. Gray sky, gray mood, gray fatigue dragging behind Elena's eyes as she signed forms and checked progress charts. The doctors were pleased with small improvements. She pretended that was enough. In the early afternoon, the rain shifted. It sharpened. Thunder rolled closer, angrier. Lightning flashed, white veins across the sky. The power flickered once, twice. The backup generators kicked in. The machines in Noah's room blipped, but stabilized. "Just a storm," one of the nurses said. But for Elena, storms were never just anything. 5 years ago, a storm had swallowed her husband whole. 5 years ago, a storm had called her phone and spoken in the voice of a Coast Guard officer. The air pressure changed. Her breathing did too. Around 4 p.m., her phone buzzed. Traffic alert. Multiple accidents on highway. Severe weather. Her therapy team started messaging. Running late, roads are a mess. Might not make the session today. That familiar tightness wound around her ribs. She stalked down the hallway toward Noah's wing, heels silent on the polished floor. She needed to see him, needed proof that he was still here. She almost ran straight into Malik. He was pushing an empty cart, wet footprints trailing behind him from his last trip out to deal with a leak near the garage. His uniform was damp at the shoulders. "Sorry," he said, stepping back quickly. "Where are the therapists?" Elena demanded. "Stuck in traffic, far as I know." He watched her face. "You okay?" "I'm fine." She wasn't. "They should have been here an hour ago." "Ma'am, there's a storm. People drive stupid in the rain." He wiped a bit of water from his beard. "Noah's fine. I checked on him 10 minutes ago." "You what?" Her tone snapped faster than she meant it to. "That's not in your job description. If I hear a kid fussing, I'm going to check. Job description or not." His voice stayed calm, but something flickered in his eyes. "He was just scared. The thunder." I hummed a little. He settled. Elena looked like she'd been slapped with something gentle and painful. "You don't just do things with my son because you feel like it," she said. "We have protocols." "With respect, Ms. Ward," Malik replied quietly. "Fear doesn't really care about protocols." Before she could answer, the lights went out. This time, they didn't come back on. The hallway dropped into a dim, unnatural half-darkness. Only the emergency strips along the floor glowed faintly. Somewhere, a machine began beeping too fast. "Backup should have kicked in," Malik muttered under his breath. Elena's heart jumped into her throat. "Noah." She took off down the hall, the world narrowing to the sound of that alarm and the storm slamming itself against the glass skin of the house. Malik ran after her. The machines in Noah's room were blinking, fighting, failing. The ventilator screen flashed warnings, power reading low. The overhead lights were out, only the weak emergency lighting threw long, strange shadows over everything. Noah's chest rose in quick, shallow gulps. The nurse inside was white-faced, pressing buttons, trying to ration what little battery backup they had left. "The generator didn't engage?" Elena snapped, voice too high. "Something's wrong with the transfer," the nurse shouted back. "We're on emergency battery only, A sharp crack of thunder cut her off. The bed vibrated slightly with the rumble. Noah whimpered, a sound so small it almost disappeared under the alarm. Elena froze by the door, her hand on the frame, knuckles white. It was happening again. Storm. Power. Machines. Her body remembered before her brain did. Her husband's face flashed behind her eyes. The call. The words, "We did everything we could." The rain on the deck when she collapsed. She swayed. "Ms. Ward," the nurse called, "I need you to—" But Elena couldn't move. Malik brushed past her gently. He didn't ask permission. His instincts had outrun years of being told to stay in his lane. "Okay. Hey, I got you, little man," he said, heading straight for the bed. "You're okay, you hear me? You're okay." "Sir, you can't—" the nurse started. "I've been here before," he said, his voice dropping to a tone that made her listen. "Different kid. Same storm. Let me help." He looked at the ventilator, the cables, the battery indicator sliding down like falling water. "How long we got?" he asked. 10, maybe 15 minutes if we're lucky," the nurse said. "We've called the company. They're trying to troubleshoot remotely, but with the grid—" Thunder rattled the window again. Noah's eyes were wild, skittering around the room, landing on Malik's face like it was the only solid thing in a spinning world. Elena finally found her voice. "We can move him to the car," she blurted. "Hospital. We'll drive him to—" Through a storm with half the city's power out and idiots crashing into each other? Malik shook his head. He won't make that ride in this state. So what do you suggest? Her voice cracked on the last word. He looked around the room, then down at Noah, then at the guitar stand in the corner, the one therapist had brought weeks ago for some music therapy trial Elena had shut down almost immediately. The guitar from the living room now sat there, like it had been waiting. He'd never put it back on the wall. Malik took a slow breath. Something his body recognizes, he said. Something that tells him he's not alone. He grabbed the guitar, sat on the edge of the bed, and positioned it on his knee. Don't you dare, Elena began, stepping forward. He looked up at her, really looked, past the anger into the terror. Ms. Ward, he said softly, the last time I was in a room like this, with this sound, he nodded at the screaming alarm. I didn't have anything left to give my boy. I got nothing but regret from that night. He turned back to Noah. I'm not doing that twice. His fingers found the strings. The first chord filled the narrow space. The sound was warm and familiar and so heartbreakingly gentle, it made the nurse's eyes sting. The melody came next. That same lullaby. The one only two men should ever have known how to play. And here was the second one, with the first man dead. Outside, rain hammered the glass. Inside, the guitar threaded through the panic like a voice saying, Shh, I'm here. Noah's gaze snapped to Malik's hands. His breathing stayed fast, but it didn't get faster. Breathe with me, little man, Malik murmured, matching the rise and fall of the notes with the rise and fall of his own chest. In. Out. That's it. Elena stepped closer, hand flying to her mouth. She was shaking. She didn't know if it was from fury, fear, or something she couldn't name. Whoa, what are you doing? She whispered. Giving him something to hold on to, Malik replied. His voice was low, rough around the edges. Storms sound different when there's music in the room. The nurse checked the monitors. A tiny shift in the heart rate. Less erratic. Still too fast, but not spiraling out of control. It's working, she breathed. Thunder cracked again. Noah flinched. Malik switched chords, sliding into a deeper, steadier pattern, like a heartbeat. That's it, he murmured. I got you. I got you. You're not alone. You're not alone. His eyes glistened. For a split second, he wasn't seeing Noah. He was seeing another boy, smaller, brown-skinned like him, in another bed in another storm. His hand trembled, but didn't stop playing. Something inside him finally broke. He leaned closer, pressing his forehead gently to Noah's. Just let him call me that once, he whispered, voice shredded. Please. Noah's fingers latched onto the front of Malik's uniform, clutching as best they could. And then it happened. A sound, small and raw and stumbling, pushed its way up from someplace deep inside Noah's chest. His lips parted. D-duh. The syllable caught, stuck, trembled. Malik's heart slammed into his ribs. You can do it, he choked. Say it. Noah tried again. Mouth clumsy, tongue heavy, the wires of his body misfiring but fighting through. D. His lungs dragged in air like it hurt. Dad. The word was broken. It was perfect. The room went quiet for half a second. Even the storm seemed to pull back and listen. The nurse gasped. Malik's fingers slipped off the strings. At the doorway, Elena dropped the clipboard she didn't know she was still holding. Papers exploded across the floor like startled birds. Her son had never spoken. Not a word. Not a sound that wasn't involuntary or reflexive. And his first word, his very first word, he had given to a man she'd barely looked at twice. To a black man with a mop and a guitar and eyes full of ghosts. Something tore awake in her, raw and ugly and honest. "No," she whispered, then louder. "No, no, no, that's not—" The lights flickered, then surged back to full strength as the generator system finally kicked in properly. Machines stabilized, alarms calmed. If anyone cheered, she didn't hear it. All she heard was that one word, echoing. Dad. She didn't fire him. She wanted to. Her pride screamed for it. Her fear begged for it. But something else, something quiet and tired and done with pretending, held her back. Instead, she demanded answers. Hours later, when the storm had passed and Noah slept, Elena sat alone in her office with Malik's file pulled up on her tablet. She stared at the lines she'd skimmed over before. Former employment, pediatric rehab center. Previous training, respiratory support technician, emergency room volunteer. And then, tucked at the bottom of the notes some HR person had added without thinking she'd ever read it. Requested transfer to lower stress role after loss of child during major storm-related power failure at previous facility. Her stomach dropped. Loss of child. She clicked through to a scanned report. A photo appeared. A small boy, about 4, dark-skinned, wide smile, holding a toy truck in one hand and a drumstick in the other. Name: Micah Johnson. Cause of death: complications from cerebral palsy during equipment failure. The report blurred at the edges. Elena sat back in her chair, hand shaking around the tablet. He had been here before, in a room like this, with a storm like that. He had watched the power die and the machines fail, and a boy he loved more than his own life slip away while music sat silent in a corner. No wonder his hands shook when he played. No wonder his voice broke when he whispered, "Let him call me that once." She closed her eyes. For the first time since her husband's accident, Elena let herself think about someone else's storm. The next afternoon, she drove herself. No driver, no security. Just her and a car she barely ever used, sliding down slick streets toward the address on Malik's file. His building was old brick, weather-stained, halfway between charming and "we're working on it." Kids' bikes leaned against the railing. Someone had left a pair of pink sneakers on the stoop. She sat in the car for a full minute before getting out. The rain had softened to a fine mist, collecting in her hair and on her expensive coat. The hallway smelled like fried onions and laundry detergent. Voices floated through thin doors, someone laughing, someone arguing, someone singing off-key to a pop song. She found his apartment and knocked. When the door opened, Malik stared at her like she was a glitch in his system. "Ms. Ward," he said. "Is Noah okay?" "Yes," she answered quickly. "He's fine. He's more than fine, actually." She swallowed. "Can I come in?" He hesitated, then stepped aside. The living room was small but tidy. A framed photo of Micah sat on a shelf next to a cheap, well-loved speaker. A candle had burned down halfway beside it. Next to that was another photo, worn at the edges. Malik and a woman, younger, smiling. The frame faced the wall. Elena's eyes fell on the photo of the boy. "He was beautiful," she said softly. Malik's jaw tensed. "He was noisy," he replied, a half-smile twitching before dying. "Couldn't sit still. Couldn't stop drumming on things. Couch, pots, my head, anything." "Micah," she said, his name tasting new and heavy on her tongue. "You read my file," Malik guessed. "I did." She looked up at him. "I saw the note. About the storm. About the machines." He exhaled slowly, shoulders dropping. "There was a backup system failure," he said. "Like today. Except ours didn't come back on in time." He glanced at the photo. I used to work with sound, you know. Music. Live events. I thought I understood electricity. His hands flexed in the air, remembering. That night, I learned I didn't understand anything at all. Elena stepped closer to the little makeshift shrine. And you still walked toward my son today, she said. Into the storm. Again. I promised myself after Micah. He paused. His throat worked. I promised I'd stay close to kids like him, even if all I could do was mop the floor outside their rooms. I can't fix what's broken in their bodies, but I can at least be there. Why the guitar? She asked. Why that song? Malik blinked. That song? He seemed genuinely confused. It's the only lullaby my grandma ever sang to me. I played it for Micah when he was a baby. Guess it stuck in my fingers. My husband used to play that exact melody, Elena whispered. Same pauses, same little slide into the third chord. Her eyes were distant. He said he made it up. Maybe he did, Malik said softly. Maybe my grandma did too. Maybe his mom hummed it under her breath and forgot she taught him. Music travels through people. It doesn't always ask permission. For a moment they stood in silence. Two storm-damaged adults in a too-small room, wrapped in the sound of a melody neither of them really owned. I was angry, Elena admitted. The words scraped coming out. When Noah called you... She couldn't say the word. When he said that, I've spent 6 years pouring everything I have into him. Money, time, whatever's left of me. And he gave his first word to you. She looked at him, eyes bright with something raw. But I saw the security footage, the way you held him, the way you talked to him. You weren't stealing anything from me. No, ma'am. His voice steadied. I was giving him something I couldn't give my own boy. Her throat tightened. I don't know how to share him, she confessed. I don't know how to share my son. I don't want to take your place, Malik said, voice low. Noah's got one mother. Nobody can step into that. But if he needs a second set of hands, a second heartbeat in the room when it gets dark, he nodded slightly. I can be that, if you let me. She looked at him for a long time, at his grief, at his steadiness, at the quiet way he said, if you let me, like he already knew she could say no and he would accept it. Come back tomorrow, she said, not as a cleaner, as, I don't know what to call it yet, a companion, something. He huffed a soft laugh. Something works for me. And Malik? She added, hand on the door. Yes, ma'am? About what he called you. Her eyes held his for a beat. I can't promise I'll be okay with it right away. But I won't punish him for it. Or you. He swallowed. Thank you. Days blurred, but something subtle shifted in the house on the hill. The therapists still came. The schedules still filled whiteboards. The machines still hummed. But now, in between all the clinical structure, there were other things. There was Malik, sitting cross-legged on the floor beside Noah's chair, guitar on his knee, guiding the boy's stiff fingers to pluck a string. There you go, he'd grin. That's you. That's your sound. There was Elena, standing in the doorway at first, arms crossed, pretending she was only there to supervise. Then, eventually, stepping further in, leaning against the wall, listening. There were tiny moments. Noah's eyes tracking Malik back and forth across the room. Elena laughing, surprised by the sound of her own voice, when Malik missang a lyric on purpose to make Noah's lip twitch in what might someday become a smile. On a Tuesday, Noah managed and looked straight at Elena. She froze. "Say it again," she breathed. "Ma." He fought with his tongue, his lips, every misfiring neuron. "Mom." It wasn't smooth. It wasn't clear. But it was there. Elena's knees almost gave out. Malik looked away, giving them a moment that wasn't his to witness. After Noah fell asleep that night, Elena found Malik in the kitchen, washing out a coffee mug. "He said Mom today," she said. "I heard." Malik smiled, not turning around. "Sounded good on him." "It sounded..." Her voice cracked. "It sounded like being forgiven." He set the mug down, dried his hands. "You don't need your kid to say Mom to be forgiven," he said gently. "You just gotta show up, every day, even when it hurts." "You talk like someone who knows about not showing up," she said quietly. He leaned against the counter. "I was tired," he admitted. "I had a double shift the night before. I almost took a nap instead of going in early to check on Micah. By the time I got there," his eyes shone. Storm had already done its work. Her own guilt recognized his. "We're both haunted by the 10 minutes we weren't where we think we should have been," she said. "I pushed Mark onto that boat. You weren't there early enough for your son, and we both decided to punish ourselves forever." He let out a breath that sounded like surrender. "Maybe," he said. She studied him, really studied him. For the first time, she let herself notice things that had nothing to do with his job. The way his shoulders relaxed when Noah laughed. The way he always made sure staff on lower pay grades got a fresh plate when food was ordered in. The way his hand hovered an inch away from Noah's curls before he actually touched them, like he was always asking for silent consent. "Help me with something," she said suddenly. "With what?" "Forgiving myself," she answered. "You seem a little further down that road than I am." He barked a dry laugh. "If I'm further down, it's only because I've had longer to walk. I've been mad at myself for years, Elena. I'm just tired of carrying it." She looked at him when he said her name. No Ms. Ward. Just Elena. The sound of it did something strange in her chest. "Then maybe we're both tired," she said. "Maybe we can, I don't know, be tired together." His eyes softened. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I think we can." On the first sunny day after weeks of rain, they moved Noah's chair near the biggest window and opened it a crack to let in air that didn't smell like antiseptic. The city sparkled below. Birds rode invisible currents. The sound of traffic drifted up, horns, brakes, the distant wail of a siren. "Noise," Malik said, strumming lazily. "Beautiful, messy noise." Elena sat on the edge of the couch, barefoot for once, hair pulled back in a loose knot. She looked younger like that. Softer. "Mark used to say cities are just big hearts," she mused, all pumping and pulsing and occasionally skipping a beat. "Smart man," Malik said. "He was ridiculous," she smiled. "Played that stupid made-up lullaby every night. I used to roll my eyes. Now I'd give anything to hear him play it one more time." Malik's fingers brushed the strings, slipping into that melody again. She watched his hands. "I never thought I'd let anyone else touch that guitar," she said quietly. He glanced at her, asked, "You sure you're okay with it?" "No," she answered honestly. "But I'm learning to be." "Why?" he asked, genuinely curious. "Because I realized something." She turned to Noah, who was watching both of them, his gaze moving back and forth. "That guitar doesn't belong to my grief. It belongs to the people my husband loved." Her eyes met Malik's. And somehow, that includes you now. The air shifted, not dramatically, just a small, almost imperceptible tilt. Malik's breath caught for half a second. I'm just a guy with a mop, Elena, he said. But the joke was too thin to hide behind now, and his voice betrayed him. No, she said softly. You're the man my son called Dad when the world was falling apart. He swallowed. And you're the woman who walked into my storm, he replied. When you didn't have to. A quiet stretched between them. Not empty, not awkward, just full of things neither of them was ready to name yet. Noah broke it with a little grunt of effort. He lifted his hand slowly, fingers trembling. Elena leaned forward. Do you want to? She asked. His hand hovered in the air between her and Malik, shaking with the effort of holding it there. Elena placed her hand under his, supporting the weight. Malik did the same on the other side. Noah's palm ended up resting on both of theirs at once. 3 different skin tones, 3 different histories, one tangled present. Family looks weird sometimes, Malik murmured. Elena smiled, eyes shining. Yeah, she agreed. It really does. Noah's mouth moved, his brows knit, like he was concentrating harder than he ever had. Mom, he said, looking at Elena. Yes, baby, she whispered, tears sliding freely now. I'm here. He turned his eyes to Malik. D. His voice was a little stronger this time, more sure. Malik's shoulders shook. I'm here too, little man, he whispered. As long as you need me. Time didn't magically heal everything. It never does. There were still long nights and bad days and appointments where the news wasn't what they hoped. There were moments when Elena's old fear hissed ugly things in her ear. There were days Malik's grief sat so heavy on his chest he could barely breathe. But something was different now. Storms still came. They just didn't come alone. On one particularly rough night, Noah woke up crying. Really crying the way he hadn't been able to before. Overwhelmed, exhausted, angry at his own body. Elena tried to soothe him, but he arched away from her touch, frustrated. She stepped back, guilt punching her. I don't know what to do, she choked. Malik stepped in, putting a hand on her shoulder as he passed. You're doing fine, he murmured. He just needs a verse you don't know yet. He sat, began to play, and beckoned her closer. Come here, he said. Sit beside me. We'll learn this one together. She did. They did. Later, when Noah finally fell asleep, worn out from crying, Elena didn't move away from the couch. Malik sat beside her, guitar quiet on his lap. Can I ask you something? She said into the soft dark. Anything. When he called you Dad that first time, she paused. Did it hurt? He stared down at his hands. Yeah, he admitted. It felt like someone opened a door I'd nailed shut from the inside. For a minute I thought, if I let this in, I'm going to lose Micah all over again. And, she whispered. And then I realized I didn't lose him, Malik said slowly. He's right here. He placed a hand over his heart. Letting another kid call me Dad doesn't erase my boy. It just means I got more love than I thought. She nodded, tears slipping down her temples onto the couch. What about you? He asked. When Noah called me that, did it feel like he was choosing me over you? Yes, she said plainly. It felt exactly like that, for about 5 seconds. And then I saw the way he held on to you, like he'd found somewhere safe to put his fear. She turned her head toward him in the dark. And I realized I'd rather he have two people to run to than one perfect mother he's afraid of disappointing. You're not perfect, Malik said, in case you were wondering. Yeah, she huffed a wet laugh. I've noticed. You're enough, though, he added. For him. For this. The word this hung between them, heavy with more than just co-parenting. She didn't pick it apart. Not yet. Instead, she shifted closer, shoulder brushing his. Outside, rain started again, soft against the glass. Not a storm this time. Just weather. Just water. I used to hate that sound, she said. I know, he answered. I could see it in your face every time the forecast said heavy showers. It sounded like loss, she whispered. Like the night they called. Like the day I realized Noah would never have the life we planned for him. What's it sound like now? He asked. She listened, rain on glass, breathing, the faint, steady beep of a monitor, a guitar leaning quietly within reach. Like life, she said finally. Messy, wet, loud, still here. He smiled in the dark. Yeah, he said, still here. Months later, when strangers saw them together, they stared. A white woman in a simple sweater and jeans, pushing a custom chair. A black man walking beside her, a guitar strapped to his back. A little boy between them, eyes bright, mouth working hard to shape new sounds. Some people stared because of the wheelchair. Some because of the way Malik's hand hovered near Elena's lower back without quite touching, like it wasn't sure yet if it was allowed. Most people looked away quickly when Noah caught their gaze and shouted his favorite new word, "Hi!" Sometimes he said "Mom" in grocery store aisles, and strangers smiled at Elena. Sometimes he said "Dad" in parking lots, and strangers looked at Malik with confusion, then understanding, then softened a little. Family didn't always match, but it didn't have to be real. One evening after a long day, they ended up back in the living room where everything had started. The guitar hung on the wall again, but it didn't feel like an untouchable relic anymore. Play, Noah demanded, the word still fuzzy but insistent. Malik grinned. Bossy, he teased, taking the guitar down. Where do you think he gets that from? Elena raised a hand, guilty. I plead the fifth. They laughed, the sound layering over the memory of sobbing and alarms this room had once known. Malik sat, strummed. Elena curled up at the opposite end of the couch, toes tucked under his thigh like it was the most natural thing in the world. Noah half dozed, head heavy against Elena's hip, one hand resting on the guitar's body, feeling the vibration. When the song wound down, Elena looked at Malik, really looked. Do you ever think about us? She asked quietly. He stilled. Define us, he said, a little wary, a little hopeful. She smiled, small but sure. The three of us, she said first. This weird, mismatched, broken, and somehow working thing we've built. Yeah, he breathed. All the time. And the two of us? She pushed, voice barely above the hum of the amp. He stared at her, the weight of the question settling in. I think about not messing this up, he said honestly. About not rushing anything. About how much we've both lost, and how careful we gotta be with whatever this is turning into. She nodded. Me too, she said. I don't know what I'm ready for, but I know I'm not scared of the rain anymore when you're here. He reached over very slowly, giving her time to pull back. She didn't. Their fingers laced together. Noah snored softly, a tiny whistle on each exhale. Outside, the sky was heavy again, pregnant with another storm. Elena listened, waiting for the old panic. It didn't come. Instead, she felt Malik's hand warm around hers, heard Noah's breathing steady and strong, and the world didn't end. It just kept going. A little bruised, a little louder, a lot more loved. That winter, the storm still rolled in over Seattle, but inside the glass house on the hill, thunder no longer sounded like the beginning of loss. It sounded like the intro to a song they were learning to play together. If some part of you recognized yourself in their storms, the guilt, the almosts, the families that don't look like the pictures in magazines, just know this: you're not alone in it. And if you'd like, you can leave a little message in your own heart for Elena, for Malik, for Noah, the part of them that lives in anyone who's ever loved through the rain.